Hello, fellow commercial real estate enthusiasts. My name is Jana Truman, and I am so happy to have my guest here, Mathew Graves. We are a commercial real estate company, but more importantly, we are your source to accelerate your learning for all things commercial real estate. And in fact, helping you improve your life, not just in real estate, but also personally. My name is Jana Truman. I'm the managing broker for Accel Commercial Real Estate. We are affiliated with SBN. We also have a business brokerage, Accel Exit Advisors, and we have a commercial property management company. So we are qualified to help guide you in your journey to learn about commercial real estate. And today, I have a broker from SBN Accel Commercial Real Estate, Mathew Graves. Can you tell us a little bit about you, Mathew?
Yeah, my name is Mathew Graves. I am an industrial advisor here, solely industrial real estate. I moved here about a year and a half ago from Southern California, where I was working for Lee & Associates doing industrial real estate, and I've been working for SBN Accel for about 8 months now, and it's been great. I've been loving it.
So what are the biggest differences that you see in doing commercial real estate here in Nashville versus in California? What was that journey like? And why Nashville?
I would say the number one difference I've noticed from Nashville to Southern California is it's a little bit more old school. A lot of people will hang on to buildings here for 50 plus years. And in California, it wouldn't be rare to see a building trade 5 times in the course of 10 years. So that's something that I've noticed a lot. And then Nashville, it's a great market for industrial. Everyone's moving out of California, and I was just one of them. Didn't really want to stay there for too long. I'd been there my whole life. So I just needed a little bit of change. And Nashville has everything: tourists, it has cheaper living. And it is one of the top industrial real estate markets in the United States right now.
Well, I'm glad that you said that, because I was just on the phone the other day with a group of investors who they actually live in California at the moment, but they are divesting all of their assets in California, and they want to reemploy their assets here in Tennessee, essentially. And in fact, they just sold a 150,000 square foot industrial building in Empire, and they did it with your former team. So I told them that I would make sure to introduce them to you so that they could have their own bird dog here in the state. So
yeah, that'd be great.
I think it's going to be an exciting time. So talk about what's happening nationally with industrial real estate in particular. I think it has been, at least for us, kind of the darling for us. Challenge for us in Nashville is that a couple of years ago, we had a tornado that came through, and it took out 7.5 million square feet of industrial real estate. And they built back 8.5 million, and we still, even after that, had a vacancy rate of less than 3%. So talk about that here. What are you seeing?
So right now, I believe the national vacancy rate for industrial is around 4.5% right now, and Nashville's is at 3.1%, and there's only a couple other cities that are lower than that, but we're having a lot of big corporations move to Nashville for taxes, for cheaper labor, for a bigger, more reliable workforce. And there's a lot of expansion in Nashville versus, let's say, California. There's a lot of stuff that's already developed. And in Nashville, if you drive down the interstate, you'll see a 500,000 square foot warehouse being developed. And there's 6 more of them being developed within a 30-mile radius of Nashville.
Yeah. One of the things I've seen is that the market in Nashville has been pretty hot, but we have stabilized a little bit, I think. But I think that's a nationwide thing. And I do think a lot of that has to do with the lending environment. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that and how have interest rates affected with what's going on in industrial right now?
Yeah, I speak to a lot of developers, and they are slowing down and being a little bit more picky with what they are willing to purchase. But there's still a massive influx of money coming into Nashville. And I like to view Nashville as not really comparable to what the rest of the United States is doing.
That's actually very true.
Because it's kind of its own golden market, because all of these developers won't really buy in a lot of other places. But if the numbers aren't necessarily the best in Nashville, they know what Nashville is going to be turning into. And they're still willing to put the money here, build the warehouses. And even if they're not making a ton of money off of it in the first couple years, they're looking at it at the 20, 30, 40 years down the road.
Exactly.
Which is what Nashville is going to be a great market.
Well, we had in the crash of 2007 and 2008, the Nashville market really, where other areas, MSAs, they experienced double-digit dips in their real estate markets in the 30 and 40 and even up to 60%, depending on the part of the country that you were in. And in Nashville, we really only had, at the very most, between 8 and 10% across the board in all asset classes. Plus, you have, like, for the reasons that you said, we also had a very stabilized market. It bounced back relatively quickly. Now, we did have some issues with it, and our construction has measured out a little bit at the moment, but I'm not seeing a whole lot of slowdown on the industrial side. Now, sometimes people think of industrial as just one blanket type of an investment, but you have worked and within that asset class, you've worked in several silos of that. Could you talk to us, maybe for the benefit of our audience, those especially that might be thinking about investing in multi-tenant industrial, what are the different kinds of opportunities that somebody might have to invest in industrial real estate in the greater Nashville area? Because it's not just one size fits all.
Yeah. I would say everyone thinks of industrial as just a big warehouse, which that's what it is, but there's a lot of different types of industrial. So something that I really focused on in the beginning of my career was industrial outdoor storage yards, which is very hot everywhere in the United States right now.
Why?
Truck parking everywhere. All these cranes you see in downtown, they need to store the cranes somewhere. All of the massive construction companies, they need to put all of their materials, even big landscaping companies, they need to be able to put all of their equipment somewhere. And then it's also a land play, because you can purchase 10 acres right now and be making X amount of money off of it over the course of the next 10 years. And then you could flip it to a developer, and then he'll develop a brand new warehouse on it. So there's a lot of different uses that just that dirt can have, and then that's still not the highest and best use. Maybe at the time it's the highest and best use, but in 10 years from now, they could need more warehouse space, and then you can flip it and make a profit. There's also solar farms, which is going to be a big one right now. A lot of the EV power plants are all very heavy industrial uses. Multi-tenant industrial parks, well, there'll be a small 1,200 square foot unit with a bathroom and an office, and there'll be 50 of those in a complex. So there's a lot of different types of industrial real estate.
Well, and we're seeing a lot of pent-up demand for that smaller multi-tenant space, where actually it can even go as low as 2,500 square feet, 25 to up to 20,000, depending on. And that's actually one of the things that when we tell people if they wanted to invest in something right now, that's what we're telling them.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there's so much pent-up demand. To put that into context, back in the even just 5 or 6 years ago, rent rates were in the $6 range, and right now, even the spaces that are existing, not the brand new Class A stuff, you're looking at $10 to $14 a square foot, and I'm seeing even up to $18 a square foot for that small flex space that we're talking about.
Yep.
It's crazy hot, and there's just nothing. So when we are working on our deals, we actually are trying to make sure that we have not just the connections with the landowners, but all the supporting people who build metal buildings, who do fire suppression, who are concrete, manufacturers, so that they can come in and do the foundations, the plumbers, all the people that can support the construction, because it's just not there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
What about this energy stuff? Talk more about that, and like batteries.
Yeah.
What's going on? What are the big boxes doing in the greater Nashville area?
So the biggest one right now is going to be Blue Oval City, and that's just on the outside of Stanton, Tennessee, which is a couple hours away. And it's going to be the new General Motors plants, and it's the biggest investment in Tennessee history. I believe it was close to $6 billion being invested in that plant, and it's going to bring in thousands of jobs. And we're also seeing Ford with their Spring Hill plant. They just put in another $2 billion into their EV plant, and then there's two other massive ones that are part of the Blue Oval in Kentucky as well. So we're seeing a massive influx of all of the EV technology being brought into Tennessee.
It's pretty exciting, actually, to be on the forefront of that.
Yeah.
You and I've had that conversation before, that we get to be part of that tip of the spear of solving some of these problems that the country has for energy.
Yeah.
And it's happening right here, right now in Tennessee.
Yeah, and I think something else that will also play into it, which the technology isn't quite there yet, but electric trucking and charging stations for electric trucking, I think, is going to be something that is going to be a big role in the industrial market.
I think I am a former commercial real estate appraiser, and I actually had lunch with my old boss yesterday, and we were talking about why I liked industrial so much. And I think I told him it was because I liked to climb over, into the mezzanines and into the paint booths and see all that big equipment and see the ingenuity of it all. It was just so fun for me to be able to be in, and I felt like I was on National Geographic or one of those DIY shows where you get to see how things work. Yeah. Well, I'm actually in that, doing that, and then selling that. And I just thought that was the coolest thing. Yeah. So we've got the Blue Oval City. What else?
That's about all that I know about at the moment. Like I said, Clarksville has a 150-acre solar farm that's going up that's going to be able to support up to 1,000 homes for a year. And it's going to be able to, there's a lot of other big industrial developments that are going to be going on there. And something with the newer warehouses for logistics is going to be a lot of automation. Yeah. And with the automation, it requires a lot of power. So having this power source nearby with the solar farms is going to be super helpful.
Yes. Well, and for those that are not familiar with the logistics of what's going on in Nashville, when you look at the location of Nashville, you can get within 9 hours to 2/3 of the United States. So that means that you can have a logistics hub here, and you can distribute to pretty much almost all of the Eastern Seaboard and all of the Midwest. It really doesn't make sense to do it from the California side, but on east of the Rocky Mountains, we are a major hub or point of distribution, and so we're seeing a lot of that go on. Another thing that I think is really interesting is when people think of Nashville, they think that we are Music City, right? And they think honky tonks and tourism, and most people are really surprised to find out that that is actually like number 5 or 6 on the list. And one of the cool parts about Nashville is we have a very strong basic economy, meaning that we do things that bring money from outside in the country to Nashville in the form of manufacturing, and in particular, lately, a lot of automotive. In fact, we moved here in 2006, And we came right on the tails of Nissan North America. And then they built the GM plant. And now in Spring Hill, they are continuing to build these mega Class A industrial buildings. And I'm pretty excited about that. The General Motors facility down there now is spawning all the support businesses that go along with that construction. So we're seeing in the greater MSA, these companies that are doing the seatbelts or the safety mechanisms or the brakes or anything that you can think of to support automotive manufacturing. So people, back in the olden days, that you used to think of Detroit as Auto City, USA. And now, I wouldn't say Nashville's Auto City. It's not the new Auto City, but it is a major industry, one of the contributing. But the other one that I'm seeing more of is medical. And we're finally starting to see the trickle of medical manufacturing coming to Tennessee and research and development facilities. And there are still other areas of the country that have a corner on those markets. But because we have such a huge healthcare footprint here, there is a demand now for those companies to have more reliable sources of manufacturing. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that coming down the pike.
And they're going to need to have those Class A buildings to be able to support them, because I know some of the medical buildings have to be temperature controlled, and they have all these very fine instruments that they deal with. So the fact that Nashville has all of these Class A buildings going in, it kind of feeds directly into that asset itself.
Well, and I'm wondering if those types of things might be a great secondary use or an adaptive reuse for some of our Class B and C offices that are in some of our nodes that are not as popular, as we're seeing that flight to quality for the office users going to the top of the Class A, and some of those Class B and C properties, especially the standalone properties. I think we may see some zoning changes to allow for some of those smaller manufacturing, because a lot of them already have a loading dock already. So in your experience, how hard or how easy is it to get a rezone in Nashville? And is that something that somebody ought to consider to be able to do as a paper development? What do you think?
So in Davidson County, I haven't heard great things from people trying to get rezones. And I think the department is just overwhelmed with how many different types of asset classes. I mean, you drive in downtown Nashville and you'll see 10 cranes building all these multifamily hotel apartment complexes, and someone else will try to get a rezone for 10 acres and they're all going to the same department of people handling them. So I think it's possible, but there's a lot more loopholes that you have to jump through when you're dealing with a super busy county like Davidson. That's why we're seeing a lot of these big box developments moving to more county-owned land, because they're a little bit easier to work with the municipalities of Nashville and Davidson County.
Sure.
So that's where we're seeing a lot of development up in Portland, Tennessee, White House, Tennessee, Gallatin, Mount Juliet. We're seeing a lot of those, and those cities are usually a little bit more catering to big box rezones for industrial development.
Well, especially at some of the more outlying communities, we're seeing a lot more of the opportunity zone types of developments where they want to bring people in, and they are, municipalities are basically buying land with the idea of having industrial parks. I mean, that's not new. That they've been doing that for a long time. But one of the fun things about this area is there are still TULIP programs, or taxes in lieu of payment, where they can either give you breaks that might be graded over time, or they just give you land instead, and you continue to pay the taxes, but they just give you the land. Or there's all different kinds of programs. In fact, Tennessee Valley Authority has grants and things like that to be able to allow for people to bring jobs to some of those outlying areas, and they are becoming highly incentivized.
Yeah, that's the number one thing I hear about the cities, is they don't care too much about the projects that you're bringing in, but they want to bring in as much economy and jobs to the city as possible.
Show ups, yeah. So I want to know if you really have this this land, just that you inherited it maybe, or that you thought it would be a good investment, and maybe when you bought it, you were thinking you were going to use it for something else, and now you have changed your mind. So you've got this land that has the IWD or the industrial zoning. I want to dig a little bit more deeper into that outdoor storage thing. So what would I do if I owned that property? First off, how would I get a hold of you? And what would I expect in that process so that I could potentially go from maybe having it just be an agricultural use where I'm not getting anything but just renting the dirt to a farmer who's, farming it or running cows on it, to actually having it be that kind of a outdoor storage. So can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so number one step is always municipalities. That's always changing. They could be changing something on the website with the zoning map, and you didn't see that. Your property could be zoned something else that you don't know about if you've owned it for 30 plus years. It could also be zoned something that's more valuable if it's a different type of industrial zone that can cater for heavier uses like a scrapyard or something like that versus a light industrial use, which will just be like a smaller metal warehouse or something. So I would say reach out to your municipalities, make sure you know exactly what your property is zoned. Go look at the permitted uses, see what is permitted within that zone. And then if you did want to go the route of industrial outdoor storage, see what improvements have to be made in that site for it to be permitted. Because you can have a property that is zoned for something, but there's improvements that have to be made to the property to have a legal permitted industrial outdoor storage yard. So if you wanted to sell it or lease it out to, let's say, an Amazon, they need it to be fully permitted, and you need to reach out to the municipalities and see if you're going to have to fully pave it, see if it's in some type of FEMA flood zone. Some cities will require setbacks, and it can't be near residential or certain zones. So definitely reaching out to the municipalities and just asking them every question that you can think of, and most of them are super happy to explain the ins and outs of everything that has to do with your property.
Well, and I think some people think because their property is in a flood zone that it isn't going to be usable. And in actuality, that might be one of the very best uses for that outdoor storage, especially if it is a like a plumbing yard where they have the big cement culverts and things like that. That would be an excellent use. Or sometimes they do the outdoor storage for big spools of wire, right? And oftentimes those truck parkings, the concrete and the reinforced concrete is so thick that it can tolerate having water on it, and that it's not a big deal to have 3 or 4 inches of water if you're going to be doing big truck storage, especially if it's coming and going a lot. So I think probably if I were somebody who owned that land, the very first call I would make is to Matt, because he'll be able to help you decipher what is probably the highest and best use, first off. Because when you go to talk to those municipalities, you want to have an idea of what it is you were thinking about doing. Because the municipality will bring me a use. Tell me what it is you want, and I'll tell you whether or not you can do it or not. Usually that's how they do it. Yeah. So then if you know what would be the highest best use for that property based on, the topography, like you said, the flood zone, et cetera.
And if it's near an interstate for trucking, if it's 30 miles off of an interstate, then maybe it's not the best use for industrial outdoor storage. And something that also plays into it is cities will have specific trucking routes. And if your property isn't within a trucking route, then they won't want they don't want big semi trucks driving through a residential neighborhood. So all of these little factors play into it. And that's why we always say reach out to municipalities and a broker who knows about industrial outdoor storage, because most problems that have arises from a deal I've already dealt with before and know how to get around it or how to solve it. So that's why it's super important to get in contact with a broker about your property.
Right. So talk about some of the technologies that you're the most excited about. We talked about the EV and the battery stuff, but like tech, what kind of tech stuff do you use? I think sometimes people think that a residential realtor, you can just have them sell the land and then they're done. But I know for a fact that you have access to a lot of technology to be able to help them figure out the best ways. Can you talk a little bit about what you could learn about people's properties with the technology that you have?
Yeah, I always like to tell people that I'm a part-time private investigator, because that's kind of what we do a lot of the time is we figure out who owns the property, how long they've owned it for, what they bought it for, who owned it before them, what the current zoning is, if there's any plans that the city has for expansion in the next 20 years, we can see what kind of expansion plans that property is a part of. So maybe they want to turn this area into apartments in 20 years and you want to build a warehouse on it now. That might not be the best place to do that. So we have a lot of different softwares that we're able to kind of source all of this information, and we're able to explain that to a client if they want to know everything that's going on with their property.
Well, and the other thing in Tennessee that we're seeing a lot of, and I think people also think of, I know I did when I moved here a long time ago, was that these outlying areas, they weren't very progressive. And in fact, places like Mount Juliet have had they've had long-term growth plans. And they are investing in many of these outlying areas, are qualifying for grants for their industrial development. And so that means they are creating these plans, and the time to get involved in those is not at the completion of the industrial park. Right? You want to be at the front end of that so that your properties are the ones that are going to be considered for that. So if you are a property owner, it would be very helpful for you to find out exactly whether or not your property would work for what kind of industrial development, et cetera. And there are some people who might think that industrial is a less than favorable use because of the trucks or whatever. But I want to remind our listeners that our country is built on logistics and getting people to and from and products, and it is truly being part of the American dream to be able to have these American-made and American-shipped types of products and services. And I love being a part of the solution when it comes to our economy and providing opportunities for jobs for hardworking Americans who I just think that that's something I just love about industrial. It really it makes me proud to be involved in that process. So I'm a little jealous that Mathew gets to live in it a little bit more than I do. But as you can see, it's something that we know a lot about. And so if you have any interest, especially in that multi-tenant industrial for the small stuff, because there's such a high demand, I would invite you to contact Mathew. So Mathew, how can we get a hold of you?
My phone number, it's 909-633-4818. And my email is matthew.graves@svn.com. And that's Mathew spelled with one T.
Thank you so much, Mathew, for being part of our podcast today. And I hope that you found value. And if you have, like and subscribe, please follow us, and we will be bringing you more in education, and we're so happy to have had you join us today. Thank you.